I'm a little hippie. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite authors. Today we're going to talk about Herman Melville, but we're not talking about Moby Dick. Crazy, I know. Before we get started, I want to ask, who's your favorite author? I was going to say artist. Who's your favorite author? Let me know in the comments. And let's get started. Um so today we're going to be talking about not even like a book by Herman Melville. We're going to be talking about a short story by Mr. Melville, and that's going to be Bartleby the Scrivener. I read this one last year, I think like early in the year. Yeah, I read it in like February or something like that. Um, and I read it over the course of a few days. It's not long at all. I think it is maybe 50 pages max. And it's basically, let me preface this by saying I found out about it through um, a, a content creator on YouTube, on BookTube, and I think his page is called Tristan and the Classics. I'll link it here, put it on the screen so you can see exactly who I'm talking about if you're interested in a channel like that. And he was listing down books and stories that you could read in the space of an afternoon, and Bartleby the Scrivener was one of them. And at the time, I was looking for things that I could read a little bit more quickly because I was in a reading slump. And so, I was looking for things that wouldn't take very long to read. And I came across Bartleby the Scrivener. I love Herman Melville as an author. And so I was like, yeah, I want to read this, because the only thing up until that point that I had read by Herman Melville was Moby Dick. So, and I love Moby Dick. Moby Dick is one of my favorite books of all time. So it's like, oh, let me try this. So basically, I think that Bartleby the Scrivener is a story about existential dread. It's about a man that is experiencing existential dread. Of course, I don't think that was a thing when Herman Melville wrote this, but phenomenons transcend their names and their categorizing, and human beings understanding and putting a name to the phenomenon. So even though existential dread wasn't something that was in talks when Bartleby the Scrivener was read, this phenomenon has been happening to man ever since man became a thing. So it's like, I can say that that's what this is, because in my opinion, like, I've heard people say, or Tristan himself on Tristan in the Books said that it was a critique on Wall Street and on wages and capitalism, which I think two things can be true at once. I definitely do think that it was a critique on capitalism and on how we, by participating in it, allow it to thrive. But I also think that if we're just looking at Bartleby and his character and we're just giving him a character analysis, it's very clear that he was going through existential dread, because he could have just stopped working, but he didn't stop working. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but this story doesn't have a happy ending for Bartleby. And if it was just the fact that he didn't want to participate in, or if he wanted to be paid more, I think it could have been a situation of him just going on strike from working, but that's not what happened. Bro went on strike from being a human being. And whenever you're having an existential like meltdown like that, because I know what this is like. I had this happen to me when I was 17 years old, so I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. That's why I think existential dread just like intrigues me so much, is because I went through it so early in my life and kind of got past it, um and found meaning. But the thing about Bartleby is that he didn't find meaning, and he couldn't find meaning in this circular way of life where we're just doing the same things always. And I think that's what Bartleby the Scrivener is about, at least in part. And that's what I took away from it. Because of course, yes, you can critique capitalism. I am not a fan of capitalism. The more I learn about it, the less I like it. The more I experience it, the less I like it. And, I think that's true for many socioeconomic systems, but that's not what this video is about. Um, so yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not a critique on capitalism and that system and how we drive it by participating in it. Um, but for me, the existential part just really stood out to me. And I more so believe that this story is about a singular man. And by singular, I mean he is different from those around him. And he starts his protest on life by saying, I prefer not to. And, I just couldn't help but think how many things in life could just be solved simply by saying, I prefer not to. Just straight to the point, no explanation. It kind of reminds me that no, period, is a sentence. I don't want to, a sentence. We get into the habit of like explaining ourselves and explaining why we don't want things, why we don't like things, when not wanting to is valid enough. Saying no is a valid response. That is something that one could pull away from Bartleby the Scrivener as well. Um, is that it's okay to say no. Maybe don't check out of life, but just say no every now and then. I don't want to. And I think that this book made me reflect on life and the way that I live life, and the fact that we can't get away from life being this huge repetition of the same things all the time. But what you can do is you can make a decision to do something different. There is a lot of discourse going around on the internet right now of like people realizing that they have free will and you can do whatever you want because you have free will. Like if you want to buy an ice cream, buy an ice cream because you have free will. If you want to call out from work for a day and take a personal day, very on brand, because it seemed like Bartleby needed a personal day, you can. You can do that because you have free will. Nobody's stopping you. And I think that is that is something that draws a line in the sand and makes all the difference between living in this repetitious routine and stepping out of it for a second because you just need a break. And so I ended up rating it, I think, 4.5 stars, not a 5, because I don't think I would like read this over and over and over again like I would Moby Dick, but I enjoyed it. Herman Melville, he gets a bad rap because of his writing, because it's so verbose, because it's so like sprawling, it's almost biblical. It's not old English, but we definitely don't speak English the way he writes it in his stories anymore, and we haven't for a long time. So he gets a really bad rap. But when you read him, you find he's so funny and humorous and engaging. And I definitely do think that as a whole, as a writer, that Herman Melville is an acquired taste for sure, but to know him is to love him. So yeah, um, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good evening. And most importantly, I hope you read a good book, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.